I get started, I have to apologize to all the current veterans that are serving, our past veterans, and of course the sea of cadets out there who represent our future. And I'm apologizing because I forgot my military cover, of all things. I left yesterday, left home Sacramento, got on the plane, did not bring my military cover, and I was certain I had it. And it was this morning when I realized I didn't have it. And since I don't have mine on, my absolute superb aide refused to wear hers because she didn't want me to be wrong by myself. So I do apologize. I understand what we are supposed to wear our cover, but again, I apologize. I simply forgot to pack it. But today is a great day. It's always a great day when you have an opportunity to talk about our veterans, be it those who have served in the past or those who are serving today, and of course those out there who represent our future. Veterans Day is one of my absolute favorite holidays. It is my favorite holiday because if you know a little bit about the history of Veterans Day, you'll know that it has its roots in World War I. It actually was originally known as Armistice Day, and the day was actually organized to recognize the veterans from the Great War who didn't make it home. Those veterans who paid the ultimate price. Now today we know that day as Memorial Day, but Armistice Day was established and it recognized those individuals who served in the Great War, World War I, and didn't make it home. It was during World War II that the celebration, if you will, albeit solemn, was expanded. And at that point it was expanded to recognize those individuals who served in World War II. And as a result, the name was changed to Veterans Day, and it became a more festive celebration. A celebration what we have here today. It became a celebration where people came out and they recognized the selfless contributions of all men and women who served despite of the political environment, despite of the branch, despite of the war, the conflict. That's what the day was expanded. And then, of course, after World War I, we had the Korean War. And our Korean War veterans were not as fortunate as the veterans that we had serving during World War II. During World War II, when our veterans came home, they were embraced by the public. The political situation was solid, and our country was about to take off. We were going to start rebuilding a nation that was always great, but we were going to make it even much better. But when our veterans came home from the Korean War, much of what we were reflecting on during that time was World War II. And as a result, the veterans that came home from the Korean War didn't necessarily get the recognition, and very unfortunately that war became known as the Forgotten War. And of course, their sacrifice, their contributions are no less than any other individual who served in any of the wars that the United States have been in. They are selfless individuals and courageous men whom I've had the very good privilege of knowing as a member of the 40th Infantry Division, because the 40th Infantry Division served very admirably, and in fact we had a Medal of Honor recipient during that war, and as a result we have very close ties to the Korean community, and I've had the opportunity to come to know many of those veterans. So as I said, the fact that it became known as the Forgotten War is not reflective of their service. And then as you move forward in history, you know, we have our Vietnam War, and of course the Vietnam War was during a very, very troubled time in our history. And when those veterans came home, I will tell you, they were not welcomed. They came home to a very, very divided country, a country that did not embrace their contributions, their efforts, their selfless service. They did not recognize them as the less than 1% that serve in the military of the entire population of the United States. The Vietnam War veterans were probably the least recognized veterans that came home. But as you think about it today, our political climate has changed, our society has evolved, and now Veterans Day is a day that we recognize all veterans. We recognize the Vietnam War veterans. We recognize all veterans who have served. And if you think about the span that we have currently living, although several of our World War II veterans have gone on to rest, we still have some that are living. And if you take an individual that serves, decades ago, and you take that individual and you think about the 19-year-old or the 20-year-old that we currently have serving in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and actually in Syria, you think that the bond between those individuals couldn't be necessarily one that was established. You think about the age, the difference, the political climate, and you think about the current climate, but that's not further from the truth. The fact that the Veterans Day has evolved and our veterans have continued to serve and to, like I said, be part of that less than 1%, that bond that you establish as a veteran is very, very different and only unique among those of us who served in the military. And so at this point, I'd like to tell you just quickly a story, and it's a story that I was told by a couple, and this couple, they were at an event that was being held in our past Congressman Buck McKeon's office, in his district, and it was a time when I was still working full-time, and I was working in the political arena, and I had gone there to meet with him over some issues that we were concerned about in the military. And during that time, I sat with this wonderful couple, this absolutely fabulous couple, and the man, he had served in Korea, and he met and married his wife about 2 months prior to deploying to Korea, and she was very, very uncertain as to whether or not her young husband was going to come home. But of course he did, and now here we fast forward some 50 years or so later, and they're still married, and they have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But they shared this story with me that is just so indicative of a bond that is established. And so they're avid golfers. The family is a very, very progressive family. There's many of them now. Their son is a pilot in the Air Force. But I was talking to the wife, and she was telling me that when her husband deployed to Korea, she wasn't sure that he would come back. So he came back. Of course, they went on. They had their family, and as they retired, they took up a lot of different activities, and one of those activities was golf. And so she was out on the golf course, and she was playing golf with this lady who was roughly the same age as her, and they were talking, and they started talking a little bit about their respective spouses, and they learned that both of them had served in the Korean War. And as they talked more, and they played every Tuesday or whatever their steady date was, they learned more and more about one another, but they learned that their husbands had served together in the same unit in Korea. And the gentleman that I met was a platoon sergeant. The spouse of the other woman was a platoon leader. So you had a lieutenant and a sergeant who served hand in hand in the Korean War. And they fought, through a very, very bitter war. They actually fought in the Battle of the Incheon Landing. And so they came back, and of course the war was over. They redeployed, and they went their respective ways. Did not talk to each other ever again. But because their wives played golf together, they ended up attending a party together, but neither one of them knew that the other was going to come. And the lady that was there, she told me, their last name are Chambers. Mrs. Chambers told me that when her husband walked in the door that he was, thinking, well, are we going here? We don't really know these people, and, it's the holidays, and we're already busy. And she's like, oh, come along. And so he goes to the party, and they open the door, and she said they walked in, and she introduced him to a couple of people. And so he veered off to the right to get her a drink, which she asked him to do. Well, the other lady had asked her husband to go in at the same time, and they walked in, and after 50 years of not seeing one another and not exchanging a word, they recognized each other. And she said they immediately embraced, and they were shedding tears, and they just talked and talked, and they never came out of that room. They stayed in there. Might have been the fact that there was a little bit of alcohol in there too, but nonetheless, they stayed in there and they spent the entire evening together, and now today they play golf on a regular basis. But the bottom line here is that the bond that is established as a veteran is something that can't be broken and will be with you for the rest of your life. So today, as we celebrate Veterans Day, what I ask, especially all of you young people out there who will eventually go on to serve in the military, that you recognize that those people that you serve with, they will become more than just a comrade. They will become more than just a colleague. They will become more than just a friend. They will be a part of your family forever. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much. I appreciate being here, and I have to tell you, I'm in awe by looking out here at the future of our military. And again, less than 1% of today's our nation's population serves in the military, so you definitely are an elite group. Thank you. I appreciate your time.